on before me have done magnificent works in declaring their position, their assignment, their discourse, and they have done marvelous works. And they have left me very little to say. I'm going to be very glad about that. So I will get to the point and get through with this because I realize if I had time, there'd be a lot of things I'd like to tell you, but I can't tell you that many things this evening. But what I can tell you is when I read in 1 Corinthians, all right, chapter 15, and this is where my notes would have came from had I had them with me. I see a discourse by a man by the name of Paul talking to the Church of Christ at Corinth. A church who had all kinds of problems, yet he called them the Church of God. So if the Corinth church could have all the problems she had and still be called God's church, there had to be a reason. It's more than just because there were good folks down there somewhere. There's more to it than that. I want to show you some of what that is that I'm speaking about this evening. It says, "For I delivered to you," in verse 3, "as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins, according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he was raised on the third day, according to the Scriptures, that he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12. After that he appeared to more than 500 brethren at one time, most of whom remain until now, but some have fallen asleep. All right. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles. Last of all, as it were to one untimely born, he appeared to me also." Right. And then he makes some very profound points about this thing called the resurrection. Because if you take the resurrection out of Christianity, it's no different than any other religion.
That's right.
It is the one thing that sets us apart. It is the one thing that caused Paul to recognize there's still hope for the church at Corinth, no matter how many problems she may have. And that tells me there's hope for us today, no matter how many troubles may come into our midst. There is still hope so long as we will take advantage of the promise and the assurance that comes from God through Jesus Christ and the resurrection. You see, Jesus died and afterwards rose from the dead. Now, people have been dying since Adam or Abel got mad and killed Cain. Or Cain killed Abel, is that right? You can tell my notes are somewhere. After he got through killing the man, he buried him. There was nothing new about that. Men have been killing men from the beginning of the garden. But Jesus' death was totally different from all the other deaths that had ever been. And when we look at the doctrine of the resurrection, we find that it is this teaching, this is the true defense that sets us apart from all others who would declare themselves to have a religion.
That's right.
You see, Buddha is dead.
That's right.
He's in somebody's graveyard, and guess what he's waiting for? The resurrection.
That's right.
And what's he going to be resurrected to? To be judged. Who's he going to be judged by? Jesus Christ. Leo Tuz is out there somewhere. And believe it or not, Mahatma Gandhi is somewhere in somebody's graveyard. But when Jesus died, he was placed in a graveyard, but he just didn't stay there. There's a lot of difference in that. I want to give you some of my points, and then I'm going to take my seat, and you'll be happy, and we'll all go home. Is that all right?
That's all right.
I just want to share a few things with you. You see, all these wonderful brethren have come before me, and they've said wonderful things. Have you ever wondered what motivates men to stand up week after week and preach the gospel of Jesus Christ? There's a reason behind it that exceeds just a monetary substance of money. It goes beyond being able to stand before people and wear nice clothing and tell them things that would enlighten them and to actually birth the people into a different way of thinking. There's more to it than that. It goes deeper than our personal prognostications. It goes into the depth of the truth of the gospel that Jesus Christ was truly raised from the dead. Why would a young man like young Jack Jr., get up and say, from here on,
Okay.
I'm going to declare the whole counsel of God.
Okay, now.
Ask a man like Freeman White, who has been in the pulpit for years, who has stood there countless numbers of times, and every time you haven't been well received. And that is a reason behind that. Simply because there is a cause greater than the preacher. And we all have to recognize that if we're ever going to make heaven our home. I'd like to show you something about this man, Paul, starting with verse number 12.
Help us.
He makes some points here that I think are profoundly important to us. He said, now if Christ is preached, that he has been raised from the dead, how do some among you say that there is no resurrection of the dead? There are some who just don't believe. And they're not all in denominationalism. There are some of us who practice other than what we preach. That's the reason we ought to recognize that we too have a responsibility to the gospel. Notice what else he says. But if there is no resurrection of the dead, not even Christ has been raised.
Okay.
And we are here in the city where Jesus Christ, or the country where Jesus Christ actually proved the unbelievable.
That's right.
Men, I said, have been dying since countless ages, but none have gotten up like Jesus. And there won't be another resurrection until the day when we all, if we're not already here and up and about, that we will also be resurrected in that day.